This is part 4 of the June 9 lecture for GEO503 for summer 2014. We're continuing to discuss jQuery. We were just talking about referencing the jQuery JavaScript either locally or online. One other thing I want to mention is that there's another version called jQuery Mobile, which is a version of jQuery optimized for touchscreen. It takes advantage more of HTML5 and provides more class platform support, and is also a little more lightweight for easier transfer onto mobile devices. Mobile devices are coming a long way, but are still more limited on speed compared to desktops and laptops. What do we use jQuery for? The most common use is what we call jQuery selectors. We select an object or a set of HTML objects on our page to make an action on them. You will often or always see jQuery statements begin with a $, which might be very striking at first, but it's actually quite simple. It looks very different than JavaScript, but still is using JavaScript. So here's an example of a $, starting at a line, and this is the way that the jQuery library is referenced. And some basic syntax of jQuery is $, and then in parentheses the selection, and we'll see more about that in the next slide, dot, and then what action we want to take on the objects in the selection. So some examples: $this action operates on the current element. More often you'll see after the $, the next two couple. For example, TR in quotes after the $, dot action. Whatever we do will occur on every TR table row element on the page. We can also act on all elements with a certain class with the dot notifier. Or actually the last option is what I would use the most, I think, is we can operate on a specific element using its ID and the $ to begin. So the final line on this jQuery slide will perform the action on the button with the ID button save. Notice, and the $ indicates that. Another use of jQuery, and this is something that's also done quite often, we use a different JavaScript program called Dojo in JavaScript API that has a very similar function, but sometimes we will use this in jQuery. Notice inside the $ parentheses we say document, so that's referencing the HTML page when we see document, and the action is ready. And then within ready we have a function. What this does is ensures that the jQuery doesn't run until the document is ready to accept JavaScript. So this is good practice to put all jQuery code on your page within a document ready jQuery function as pictured here. This makes sure that the jQuery doesn't run before its time. So the actions, what are some common actions that we use? Often, it's on the previous slide, a common use of jQuery actions are to bind events to specific elements of all elements matching a criteria. So what that means is we can, any of these four cases, use jQuery to attach a specific event on that type of object to jQuery. So for example, button save dot click, we would replace action on the previous side with click, and then within that function you could control in jQuery what happens when that button is clicked. Here's a list of common events. I would say click, probably one of the most common on this slide, as well as the form events and the document events. Having some jQuery run when a page is loaded, for example, or resized. So in this example, on our page, presumably we have an ID, a button with the ID btn save, and we're using jQuery to attach a function using its click action. So in this jQuery example, anything that's coded here in this function would run when button save is clicked. So in this example, a link is used to change button text using jQuery. So notice there's a link that says click me to change button text. As a best practice, I'm putting my jQuery within the document.ready function there. And notice that for this to work, I have to reference the jQuery.211 version, and I'm referencing a local copy in this case. The button is the link is named myref. So the link is where we put the action. So here we have $myref with a pound sign, .click is the action, and we wrote in a function within that click action. And then within the function, we have another jQuery line on btn click, the button, and we're using the action .val. What that does is change the value of the button, which is the text on it. So clicking on the link causes the button to change from click me to changed. So here's a very simple example of using jQuery. jQuery can also be used to provide visual effects on selected elements, if we're getting to that, which we won't really in this course. And the attr action tag on jQuery can be used to change the tag of any element. So in this example, we have an image tag which starts out with an image logo of the Buffalo Bills, and there's a button on the page. So in the button's click action using jQuery, we use the attribute action of the image as the ID sports. So on here we see hashtag or #sports.attr. So the attribute, we're using jQuery to change the attribute src on the image to a new image, which is of the Buffalo Bisons. So an example of changing the attributes of an image tag using jQuery. I said I wanted you to be introduced to jQuery. We won't spend a whole lot of time in, there's just not time. But I wanted you at least to have this introduction. We'll work more with an alternative to jQuery called Dojo in reference to ArcGIS JavaScript. We'll be starting that shortly. But I wanted to at least have some exposure in the class. This concludes the lecture for June 9th.